Hello, everyone. As many of you know, my name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind the YouTube channel and the webpage Nonconformist Conscience. If you want to find me on social media, I'm on there too on Instagram and Facebook. So this week we have a few things that we need to go over. I'm going to be going over the Venus-Mars conjunction that is happening at around 1:11 a.m. my time, which is Central Standard Time here in America. I am also going to go over the Virgo Full Moon, and I'm going to break this down for us so that way we can consciously work with it. As always, look at this in your own chart and apply this to the house and the aspects it's making in your own natal chart, so that way you get a more full picture of how this can be really manifesting and reflecting in your life. Remembering that astrology isn't causative, it's only going to reflect like your ongoing evolution and what's going on in your life right now. But it is something that you can really consciously work with. That way it gives you objectivity, and to me, I find it really grounding, and it helps me see things clearer. So before I get into this week's astrology, I'm going to talk just a little bit about Chiron on the North Node, and I want to talk about natural law. Chiron is ruled by this Mars in Aquarius that is conjunct Venus. And Venus will be in a new phase conjunction to Mars, like I said, in a few hours. And we need to hold on to what I'm about to talk about, because I feel like it's really pertinent to keep it in the back of our minds as I'm talking about this week's forecast. So with the nodal axis in Libra and Aries, we are really seeing the imbalances that have happened within social structures. This has been going on. We've seen this with Pluto and Capricorn. It's going to continue to do this dance this year between Capricorn and Aquarius. But throughout that time, Pluto and Capricorn has been about exposing and getting to the bottom of man-made social constructs. Pluto is the penetrating, exposing, getting to the bottom of, and the social constructs, meaning our laws within society and our societal beliefs and our societal values and our national values. All of these things and how that has an impact on each one of us has been being exposed, and the imbalances have been being highlighted. So we can see and deduce that like what's going on in the world right now is not natural law. There is so much divisive and fragmented thinking around what's wrong and what's right, black, white, better than, less than. We've seen people, the division in the political parties. We've seen division within nations. We've seen divisions within religious movements. All of these social type of structures, it's really being highlighted right now. We're also seeing the imbalances that we have been creating with the destruction of Earth, which is a relationship. So when we think about natural law, we are thinking about how everything is rooted in giving, sharing, and inclusion. And humans are not superior to another human, to another religion, to another race, to animal or plant life. In natural law, and we see how a lot of indigenous cultures are still, rooted in natural law, but everything performs a specific function. Everything is equal to each other. There's equity. There's no better than, less than, superior, inferior. None of that. We know that an animal serves a specific function. We know that a group of people serve a specific function if they're coming together, as a tribe or as a collective or anything like that. If the world was rooted in natural law, we would not be seeing what is going on right now. And it's important for us to keep this in mind because on individual levels, we've each been on some type of level trying to evolve through understanding what gives us meaning, what our values are, and really trying to fortify and strengthen our relationship to self. With Chiron on the North Node, ruled by this Mars in Aquarius, we can, and Mars is approaching the North Node in Chiron, so it's in a balsamic phase. Something is wanting to wrap up. And Aquarius can deal with trauma. And I'm going to get into some of the other things that it can really, that's on an archetypal level that it represents and reflects. But Aries, whenever it's distorted, or it can be about war and fear. And we are definitely seeing that and how it creates a collective trauma. Mars and Aquarius, balsamic to this North Node, and Chiron. Chiron can really be where we change our awareness around some type of wounding. So there's a collective wound that has been happening, dealing with man-made patriarchal distortions, laws, beliefs, and values. And Aquarius really wants us to liberate from this type of conditioning and wants us to think for ourselves. So we are in this collective upheaval right now of being shown the imbalances, how we've been destroying Gaia, how we are destroying others. And in natural law, there would not be this divisiveness. There would not be, oh, you're for Palestine, oh, you're for Israel, oh, I'm liberal, oh, Republicans are wrong. There would be none of that. There would be a community effort, a collective effort for a collaboration as a way to keep survival going. Every person would understand that there is some purposeful work that they're doing as a way to continue to create evolution within the collective, right? And we're really being called on an individual level to do that. There are things that are wanting to wrap up right now, and to dissolve. There are long-standing cycles that are wanting to culminate. That way, a new cycle can be birthed. And this gets me into this Venus-Mars conjunction. That is going to be a new phase as Venus crosses over Mars. So, and this is going to be ruled by Uranus and Taurus, and so is this Pluto. So when we're looking at this, and if you've been consciously working with all of the energies of transforming your relationship to self, really objectifying what our values and our beliefs are and where they come from, where they stem from, how did that happen? Who taught me this? All of these things How's this affected my relationships? How's this affected my purpose? How's this affected my work? How's this affected my friendships? All of these things. The ruler of the South Node and the ruler of the North Node are now meeting up in the sky in the sign of Aquarius. And as Venus is approaching Mars, like she has been, there's also this culmination process that's saying there needs to be a liberation, a rebelling against these values that you've come to understand, that you've been objectifying and learning about yourself. And with this conjunction now, Mars and Venus, there are soul desires to liberate further from this, but to also understand our own individuality. What are our own individual values? Venus. Aquarius needs experience, and it needs to have the freedom to have whatever experiences, because it is, it can get restless. It's this energy of restlessness. And so there can be ideas that we have, or forms of thought that come in that really say, go this direction. And it's something that could be a desire that's meant to be acted upon, that could teach about what it is that's individualistic to each one of us, and to really understand what our own individual values are, since we are not wanting the old values anymore, if we've been working on this and objectifying it. On a collective level, this is about the need for community to come together, for humanity. Aquarius reflects the archetype of humanity. Excuse me. In order to liberate from man-made types of values and beliefs that are creating trauma, right? So there can be a transformation within the collective. Unfortunately, it takes a while for the majority of the collective to keep up. And so it's really important for people to do their own individual work. So that way, the more people that come together and are doing this work, it can help change the vibration of the collective. And my prayer is that we can get more in alignment with natural and universal law, instead of seeing this trauma continuously happen. So as Mars and Venus join in the sky and it's a new phase, there are, keeping in mind what I just said, this is a state of perpetual becoming. That is part of this Aries, North Node, Chiron, Mars function. There's this liberation from the old, and then the need for new experiences to be acted upon in order to understand our individuality. I was reading David Green's book called Evolutionary Astrology, Your Karmic Purpose, or let me look. Pluto and Your Karmic Mission. And I love this book because Deva really goes into the archetypes in a beautiful way. And one of the things that she says that is also Jeffrey Wolf Green teaching is that Aquarius can be where the diamond within us gets exposed. It's our own unique individuality. And that occurs through liberating from the compression of the conditioning that we've had, right? It's to be able to know one's nature. So there's this individuation process that's wanting to happen to speed up evolution right now. By getting to know, what do I value? What do I need? What resonates with me? What feels like, this feels authentic and true for me right now. So during this Mars-Venus conjunction, Juno in the sign of Virgo is in conjunct the North Node. and it's in a gibbous in conjunct with the North Node and Chiron. And a gibbous in conjunct has the function of inducing humility, and that humility helps with us to be able to self-refine or self-correct or self-improve, all of these things. And sometimes it can permit crisis. If someone has a gibbous inconjunct in their chart, or just an inconjunct in general, oftentimes whenever they've been resisting their own evolution and a transit hits that inconjunct, a crisis can be triggered as a way to realign or to get back on track, right? So Juno, when naturally expressed, is really about, how to be in relationship with others in a natural way that's rooted in interdependence, meaning that two people can be independent and hold on to their autonomy within the relationship instead of one, becoming more like the other, taking on the values of the other. In a distorted form, we can see where people can devote themselves to a relationship that is really a distorted manifestation. It's, it can be a relationship rooted in inequality or power dynamics, or we see it with infidelity sometimes, and then, sticking out for the long haul, even though it is, this thing that is not good, you know? But when we're looking at this on a collective level, this is about really devoting ourselves to our relationship to the collective right now. And Juno is retrograde, and she's in Virgo, ruled by Mercury in the sign of Aquarius. So there is this need to self-improve on a collective level and to purge these distortions and to liberate from the learned guilt. That's Mercury in Aquarius, the ruler of Juno in Virgo. Virgo can be about masochism or sadism. And with the inconjunct from Juno to the North Node and Chiron, we can see how there's this sadistic function working within the collective right now. Like Aries, Mars is not being naturally expressed on a collective level. It is in a distorted view. It's creating crisis. There's not, Juno is about our devotion to our relationships. So we can see that there's not a devotion to create inclusivity and honoring each country, all of these kind of man-made borders or constructs, the individuality of it. And this inconjunct is really about learning on a personal level through action. That is the inconjunct that naturally occurs between Virgo and Aries, is you have to take the action, Aries, in order to get feedback. And then that feedback helps us to self-improve, right? So like if, early on, whenever I was doing EA, I remember I did a class and I received feedback, and it was so painful for me at first just because of how I am, but because of the feedback I got, I was able to self-refine, to self-improve upon like my craft. And that's why Virgo can be about the apprenticeship, right? It's also about service. So with Juno in Virgo, this can be about devoting ourselves to being of service to our relationship with the whole, with the collective. We can see that with Mercury and Aquarius ruling that. And the need to self-improve upon what action to take, what action not to take. How do we change our awareness and heal these wounds? How do we culminate a whole, cycle of this dynamic? What liberation needs to happen? How can we come together? And this is going to take time. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. things are unfortunately going to get worse before they get better. Like, this is not the worst that we've seen, and I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. Um, but it is. It's like Virgo can be about denying reality. And Pisces is about, if it's distorted, we're wanting to escape that reality, or we're wanting to look at everything as rose tinted glasses, and the need is to accept the truth of the reality. And that's part of Saturn in Pisces. That is definitely in conversation this week with the full moon, and I'll get into that in a minute. But there's this need to self-improve on personal and collective levels, and to take the initiative to create action and to not stay like paralytic, right? To take some type of action to self-improve so we can get that feedback. And then need to devote ourselves to our relationship to self, and to devote ourselves to the relationship with the collective right now. Like, each person, going back to natural law, serves a specific function and a specific purpose. And it's not better than or less than, it's equal. And that's part of this South Node in Libra that we've experienced the distortions. We're needing to come back into balance and understand that each one of us has a specific function. And so it's important to do our own individuated work right now. So Juno is also in a trine to Uranus, and this is in a first quarter trine. So I was double checking that. Actually, it's in a gibbous trine, so about to be in a first quarter trine. And Juno is retrograde, so there's this repeating in order to resolve something. And this trine between Uranus and Juno, they're both earth signs, so it can be very grounding. It can help us to understand and to listen to our inner voice, but it can really help us to liberate from these dynamics that have been rooted in exclusion on a collective level, and to really cultivate an individualized relationship with self in order to then bring it out and project it out into the world. So there is this need to really, again, it's gibbous, so it is this sense of self-refinement, but there's an ease of integration with that, right? If we can be humble about where maybe we have projected things onto other people, or where maybe we haven't been devoting ourselves in a constructive and healthy and healing way. And so there is this dynamic where we can really objectify this in order to release it. And if you're someone who really struggles with guilt, as so many people do, like, I feel guilty for saying no to someone or having a boundary or this or that. Juno being ruled by Mercury and Aquarius as well, and that Mercury is ruled by this Uranus that's trining this Juno, it can really help us to liberate from the learned guilt, right? That isn't natural. Natural guilt is the feeling that you get when you know that you've really hurt someone, and it's coming from a place of anger or rage or resentment, and anger is a natural occurring emotion, but when we're not responsible with that anger, okay, we can really hurt other people, and then we can feel really guilty about it. And then, we can apologize and do the right thing, but that wound is now there. That thing is there. You can't take back that action that was not responsibly made. And so this is really about understanding what is learned and what is conditioned, and to really liberate from the conditioned guilt. So if you're someone who has a hard time saying no to people and feeling guilty after it, or maybe you're someone who has a different work situation. Maybe you're working in the evenings like me, and you're not taking on the traditional role of 9 to 5. You could feel guilty about that. These are all things that need to be objectified. And the question to ask is, should I really be feeling guilt? Is this learned or is this natural? And so this really helps us to understand this dynamic, so that way we can have a healing effect right now. So then we get to the Virgo full moon. This is Mercury ruled. Mercury will now be in the sign of Pisces, and this is really interesting. So, as most of you know, a full moon occurs whenever the moon sits across the sky from the sun. And it means that it can have a Libra-like feel, because it's in a full phase, okay? So it's like where there can be comparing and contrasting and the need to throw things off. All of these dynamics can come to a head for us to understand what they are. And so the emotional dynamics around what it is we're needing to throw off can really surface at this time. But it's interesting because this full moon is also sitting across the sky from its ruler, which is conjunct the sun, and the sun is conjunct Saturn. And this is all approaching the ruler, Neptune. So there's like a culmination process even happening with that, right? So when we're looking at Saturn and Pisces, and just Pisces in general, this is about when we come out of Aquarius. So let me backtrack. Capricorn is where we have our conditioning. Aquarius is where we observe that, objectify it, and start thinking for ourselves, is this really what I believe? Is this really what I think? We can experience this around the age of 2, I feel like, and as teenagers, this rebellion. And then during our Saturn return, we can really start to want to objectify our own conditioning, our own Saturnian stuff. But this creates, when we do this and we become individualistic and we're liberating from the things that we've over identified with that have been conditioned, right? That are like our sense of security. When we have this liberation process that is really being spoken of during this full moon, we can reveal ever deeper layers of ourselves, like the diamond gets exposed. When Aquarius, then there comes Pisces after that. And Pisces is really about the continuing process of culminating all of those dynamics in order for the individualized reflection of source to come into play, right? How each one of us are an individualized reflection of that which we come from. But there's something that is wanting to be dissolved. And so when we're looking at this full moon, and the moon is opposing its ruler and the sun and Saturn, we are looking at throwing off where we've denied reality, because honoring reality is a Piscean thing, where we need to spiritualize in our lives, where maybe we haven't been doing that. Maybe we've been afraid, or we're escaping, or we don't feel good enough. Any of these dynamics can come up, but there's also this dissolving and culminating process that's wanting to happen, where there's a dissolving of man-made structures in order for us to individuate and individualize, and then really experience ourselves as a reflection of that, of what we come from, that which we come from. And so this moon that is opposing all of this, symbolizing a full moon, is really about healing and dissolving. understanding, self-improving, through individuating, through looking at what do I really feel like are my values? What do I really feel like I want to act on? What needs to dissolve? Where have I denied reality? Where does that come from? All of this can be coming up so that way it can be purged, and that way it can be thrown off, and that way balance can occur. And so this is a 6-month cycle of really understanding what is wanting to culminate regarding our values and our needs and our beliefs. That way our own individualized sense of self can really start to be birthed. And that is part of this North Node in Aries, because if you look at all of this energy, it is wanting to culminate into the North Node. So and Aries is about a brand new cycle from the cosmic womb, Pisces. We get to be birthed into a new cycle, into, a new incarnation, on a soul level or just on an evolutionary level. There's a new cycle that's wanting to be birthed, a new state of becoming, a new way of learning what we identify with and what we don't. But for this to happen, we have to continue to objectify and to understand what's unique and individualistic about each one of us. And the polarity of Aquarius is Leo. And within Leo, whenever it's naturally expressed, if we're integrating Aquarius and Leo, because we always want to look at polarities, it's just there because it's about an integration. The thing that can happen with this Venusian energy that's at play here is we can want to hold on to specific friend groups or communities because that creates security. That's what constitutes our security. If we go to the polarity of that in Leo, it can be, I'm going to be a group of one, Aquarius, in order to self-actualize, Leo. And that Leo energy is ruled by the sun opposing the moon, and it's in Pisces. And so there is this need to really dissolve the things that we've been holding on for far too long, where we've over-identified with some type of trauma, some type of wound, some type of hurt, some type of learned guilt, any type of learning, any type of conditioning dynamic, in order to self-actualize right now, in order to birth a new cycle. And Venus in this new phase with Mars is helping us do that, because it's birthing a new cycle of what are my individual values. So it's helping all of this energy culminate. So our own individuality, the truth of our own individuality, can be reflected. And on a collective level, this is really liberating from this type of fragmented, divisive thinking, and the need to come together in community and to dissolve man-made structures that are wreaking havoc within the collective, within groups of people. Okay, that's part of Aquarius, is like groupings of people. That's part of Uranus. So Lilith is in Sagittarius and is square this, it's square the full moon. Okay, so I've talked about Lilith before, and Juno is where we devote ourselves within our relationships, our partnerships. It's how we devote ourselves. If it's naturally expressed, it's about interdependence and honoring each person's own individuality and coming together and having equity within the relationship. Vesta is about devoting ourselves to our relationship to selves, to a specific purpose, okay? Our spiritual purpose, all of that. Ceres is where we can recover our nature, and Lilith is the root. It is our most primal energy, the most undistorted self. So it's really cool to look at where your original Lilith is in your own chart. But in this chart, Lilith is square the full moon. And Lilith is in Sag and is ruled by Jupiter and Taurus. And so this again, Sag and Jupiter reflect natural law, and Jupiter is in Taurus. So there is a desire to get back to our natural roots on a collective level that is rooted in natural law. And so there's this need to look at what our beliefs are, Jupiter, and what our values are, Taurus, what our collective values are, and where distortions have been at play. On a personal level, Lilith in Sag is about understanding what your actual nature is. What are your natural truths? Jupiter and Taurus has been helping us do this because it's helping us cultivate our authentic Jupiter nature in our relationship with self, to really fortify this relationship with ourselves. That's this Taurus with Jupiter dynamic. But with Lilith square this, we can see where distortions have been at play within the collective, and there's massive amounts of tension because we aren't rooted in our root, right? Lilith can't be distorted. There's not a distorted version of Lilith in a chart, but hard aspects can show where distortions happen. So the moon squaring this Lilith and the moon being in Virgo really highlights this dynamic of denying the truth and denying natural law within society. It can be denying our own personal truths on personal levels. It can be about where we need to self-improve in order to understand what our nature is, what are our natural truths. It's Virgo is about taking in information and then internalizing it in order to understand it in an individual and a collective level, in a subjective and objective way. And Virgo can really promote healing whenever we do this. So there's this sense of needing to dissolve untruths. This is like the sun square, Lilith, ruled by this Neptune. There's a need to dissolve these untruths and to self-actualize through understanding our own nature on an individual level, and to throw off the other dynamics that are creating a wall to understanding ourselves in our most natural sense. And that a lot of healing and self-improvement can happen through understanding this. And this is part of that square. Lilith is also in a crescent sextile to Mars and Venus. And it's interesting because the ruler of Lilith is Jupiter, like I said, and Jupiter is approaching the ruler of Mars and Venus right now. So the crescent sextile is where we can be really understanding what it is that we're supposed to do, and we're supposed to continue to act upon it, because there can be a beautiful integration process. So as we act on our desires to individuate Mars in Aquarius, we get to understand our values and our needs in a new way, in a brand new way that is individualistic to each one of us, through understanding how we've been conditioned and knowing that each one of us has an individual identity and individual needs and individual values, and this is part of that. And through doing this, we get to honor our natural truths, our root, our authentic nature, Lilith in Sag. And then Jupiter is approaching, the ruler of Lilith, Jupiter, is approaching Uranus, so which is, Mars and Venus's ruler. So as it is approaching this understanding our own truths through understanding what's individualistic to each one of us and our needs and all of these things I've been talking about, we get to continue to transform our inner relationship to self by honoring what is natural and authentic and honest about each one of us. And that is what this is saying. Jupiter is also crescent sextile to Saturn. And so this really speaks to understanding what it is that we're supposed to be dissolving, that are like beliefs about ourselves that have impeded on knowing our truth or knowing our, our nature. It's also about helping us restructure our consciousness, Saturn being the structure of our consciousness, and Pisces is about this dissolving of the old structure in order for a new structure to emerge, to be birthed, because this is the process that we're all in. So it's like learning about our authentic nature. What corresponds to our authentic nature? I love that Ceres is in a grand Earth trine with Jupiter and the moon. And Ceres is about recovering our nature. And Ceres is in the sign of Capricorn, ruled by that Saturn. So we can see that part of recovering our own nature is about stepping into our authority and asking and answering our own questions and dissolving these conditioning that impedes upon us doing that. And that helps us to reveal ever deeper layers of our authentic nature. And that is, the trine to Jupiter. And then the trine to the moon is, this is how we self-improve. This is how we heal. This is how we recover. Ceres is in a last quarter sextile to the sun, which means that Ceres, I just mentioned that it's trining the moon. But this sextile to the sun is like speaking of how we self-actualize through recovering this, through recovering our own authority. Because one way to really understand that you're not being in your own authority is whenever you're following a set of standards that isn't in resonance with who you feel you are. And so part of self-actualizing is really dissolving all of these dynamics through individuating and understanding what is our individualized authentic nature right now. So this is wanting to be exposed, this whole cycle. It's wanting to expose this in order for us to self-improve or to improve within the collective right now, to come together as community, to understand that healing can really happen whenever there's a shift in the collective around our values and our beliefs. The last thing I want to speak on is that Mars Venus is in a gibbous and conjunct to this moon. Again, this is a repeating signature. Gibbous phase has a Virgo-like feel. It's about this self-refinement, self-improvement. And it's like, in order to heal the emotional dynamics, we have to have this liberation process and to understand our own unique individuality and to self-actualize through this process, to dissolve the old, to culminate the old, in order for us to understand what our own individualized reflection of source is, even on a collective level. And so these are the things that I wanted to talk about this week. This is your full moon. This is your astrological forecast. I think that this is like a time where all of us can really be having these ideas that we want to go with, that feel intrinsic and unique to each one of us. And through that, it helps us to have self-improvement through that action and that feedback. It can create a really healing dynamic. And I think this is a really beautiful way to work with this energy, is to go into it with the intention of self-discovery. What is unique and individual about myself? That way I understand what it is I'm meant to dissolve or to rebel against. That has prevented me from knowing my authentic nature. This is really what this week is speaking to. A lot can be coming up within our relationships right now, because, you know, Aquarius has the ability, and same with Uranus, to speed up evolution. And there can be this can be a period where when we're in self-discovery, we're realizing that the groups of people that we've hung out with, or the friends we've had, or the partners we have, are really not in alignment with who we're discovering about ourselves. And that doesn't mean that it's we don't want to get into fragmented thinking, okay? We don't want to be like, well, that was wrong, or you're wrong, or, because then it can get into a power dynamic, or my values are better than than the others. We want to really understand that everyone has their own process. I love to say that there's more than one way to get to Denny's, and there is. Everyone has their own path to self-discovering and to understanding their nature. And it happens at different speeds, different rates, and it just reflects how individualistic we already are. That is a naturally occurring law. And so sometimes this Venus and Aquarius energy can really speak to being a group of one if necessary. If you're pulling in the Leo polarity point, this can be, I need to self-actualize through understanding this. And I'm realizing that this environment may not be conducive, or things aren't aligning. And, and that's okay. There can be something really healing about that. And that confrontations around our individuality don't have to be negative confrontations. Pluto and Aquarius wants us to confront these things in order to have this liberation process, in order to expose, our inner diamond, as I was reading in Deva's book, which I thought was so beautiful. And so sometimes whenever we're coming to understand this, we can really need to sit with ourselves to have a reintegration of our individuality. And that is really what Uranus and Taurus can speak to, and it's the ruler of Venus. We can be seeing on collective levels a lot of people rebelling against what the status quo is right now. Anytime there's like Uranus Venus dynamics, we can, whatever like the majority is, their value system is, we can see groups of people that are really wanting to rebel against that, and eventually more people catch on to that, and then eventually it helps the collective evolve. So this is the process that we're in right now. And I want us to be gentle with ourselves, and I want us to get excited. Like, in a world that is full of sadness and collective trauma going on, it's imperative that we do our own work, because it has the ability to change the collective vibration when enough of us are doing it. Okay? Um, and so I just want us to keep that in mind. I also wanted to say before I end this video, last week whenever I talked about my dog, I'm gonna cry. I really appreciate everyone who like reached out or commented. I wasn't looking for that, but I really appreciated it, and I felt it. And my dog passed on the 16th early in the morning, and I got to walk her home, and it's a tender experience because it's a family member. I don't view my animals as different than any other family member. And so, like, my human family members. And so this has been, I knew it was coming, and I got to do what I had promised my dog that I would do. Point being, again, thank you guys for reaching out. I really appreciated it. And I felt the love, and I felt your prayers, um and I just want to say thank you. And it means a lot to me. And you know, it's a good example of this Pisces Aquarian dynamic, people coming together in a community to, you know, foster healing. So thank you all. And I will see you all next week.